Hello friends, welcome to Insights ICANN initiative. In today's video, we are going to discuss about a topic which is related to economy. The name of the topic is minimum export price. What is this minimum export price and why it will be used, in which conditions it will be used, I am going to explain. Let us see. First, as usually, we will discuss the syllabus mapping, then we will go through the video contents. First, syllabus mapping. This particular topic is related to General Studies Paper 3, particularly Public Distribution System (PDS) and the issues of buffer stocks and food security. Related to this particular video topic is related. So tell me students, in India, National Food Security Act was made in which year? If you know, so comment in the, put your answer in the comment section. It is very, very important. National Food Security Act. It appeared in various competitive exams also. Now let's see. In this video components, we are going to discuss about this minimum export price. We are discussing this particular issue in terms of which goods, especially in terms of the rice. Then what is the minimum export price? Okay, the definition and what is the concept behind this. Then we will discuss about what is the objective behind this minimum export price and what are the feature of the minimum export price and what are the challenges in the minimum export price, whether it is affecting our bilateral trade or not. Because of our minimum export price, is it giving any advantage to some other countries like Pakistan and other countries or not? We are going to discuss about that particular issues. So this is the video components of this particular issue. Now let us focus on why it is in news. It is in news, students, because Government of India recently imposed minimum export price first. Okay, 24 hours back, it imposed minimum export price on Basmati rice, and the amount of that minimum export price is 1200 per ton. I'll explain what is this minimum export price. And previously, government also announced the minimum export price on the non-Basmati parboiled rice exports also. You know, parboiled rice exports, previously minimum export price was not there on the parboiled rice export. Recently, it was been imposed. Parboiled rice exports means these are the one ready-made to, ready-made meal or ready-made rice. Generally, it is pretty much heavily used in the countries like East Asian countries and countries like China. In those countries, this parboiled rice will be used a lot, and in some, European countries as well. The thickness of this parboiled rice is somewhat heavier, like thick rice, and it is generally steam cooked. This obviously will be cooked with the steam. On this, already 20% of export duty is there with respect to export. Now recently, Government of India, yesterday, it announced that the minimum export price on Basmati rice will be 1200 per ton. So now let us discuss the concept. What is the minimum export price? Minimum export price. Listen students, minimum export price is something like the minimum price below which a product cannot be exported. Below which a product cannot be exported. Very, very important. For example, if the minimum export price is 1200 rupees per ton, in case of Basmati rice, that means, what does it mean? It means to any exporter in other countries, you cannot export less than 1200 per ton. That means if you are getting more than 1200 per ton, for example, if you are getting around 1250 or anything 1300 per ton, then you can export, but not below this. Why? Because already within India, we are facing the shortage. The first priority would be the people who are living in our country. Once their demands are met, then you can export to the other countries. So obviously, this kind of minimum export price kind of things will be mentioned. So I hope you understood. Minimum export price means minimum price below which you cannot export. After you get the same or above the price, then only you are eligible to export. Of course, it can be misused also. In the transaction, they will show the rice export will be on 1300 or 1400 on transaction. But later stages, they will compensate with the stock. Okay, there's a difference. For example, now what I will do, I will export on papers. I will show that I am exporting to person X who is living in USA. for 1300 on papers, but this person is giving 1100 only to me. But later, because he is giving, on papers, I'm saying that I'm getting 200 more. Later, I will compensate the stock. So on papers, it look like I'm exporting at 1300, but in reality, I'm exporting below 1200 only also. So this process can be misused. That is the reason some expert says that it is somewhat ineffective tool. But anyhow, so this is the minimum export price and it is in news. And when we come back to the rice, rice is a staple food across in various countries, especially in the Asian countries and in South India. And rice is majorly a kharif crop. And for the growing of rice, it requires three normal climate conditions. One is the high temperature, which is generally about 25%, and the high humidity, as well as annual rainfall should be exceeding more than 100 centimeters. Okay, these are the three conditions required for the cultivation of rice. Next, in India, rice is one of the major crop to grow. Almost all 1/4 of the total cropped area in India. For example, if it is 100 acres in entire India, we are sowing crops. In 100 acres, more than 25 acres, that means more than 1/4, you are growing up the, rice. So you can understand how much farmers depend on the cultivation of the rice. There are some states which are majorly cultivating the rice are Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Kerala, and the West Bengal. These are the states which are cultivating the rice. So that means majorly South India. In the North India, majorly, especially the eastern part of India, such as West Bengal, they cultivate rice a lot. In the rest of the states, they are more favorable towards the wheat cultivation because of the winter condition and low temperature. Next, in West Bengal, they cultivate three distinct type of rice, such as As rice, Aman rice, and Boru rice. These are the three rice varieties which are cultivated in the West Bengal, students. And if you remember, rice is also one of the crop along with the wheat. We tried the Green Revolution. The Green Revolution was tried with both rice as well as wheat, because rice is one of the staple food. It is not only directly used as a food, even it will be used in poultry, dairy, and in some other animal food also this rice will be used. And of course in a lot of snacks making also rice will be used. Next, minimum export price. As I mentioned earlier, price below which an exporter is not allowed to export. Generally, it is when there is a rising domestic demand for any particular good, then you will go for the minimum export price, so that the goods will not be exported at high quantities. That means those goods will be available to the people in that particular country. And generally, these minimum export price, generally these will be in very short term. Once the supply of the good is compensated, once the price is within the reach, once the inflation is controlled, then again minimum export price will be abolished related to that particular good. And how the minimum export price will be imposed? Is there any statutory backup? Yes. The section 5 of the Foreign Trade Development and Regulation Act 1992, it is allowing the central government to impose the minimum export price. Broadly, this statute is allowing the central government that central government can make policies regarding the exports and imports. So this is definitely having a backup of legislation. That legislation is related to the Foreign Trade Development and Regulation Act 1992. If you remember, students, in 1992, Indira Sahani judgment also delivered in 1992. Okay, very crucial judgment in terms of the reservation to backward class. The present issue. India is the world's largest exporter of rice. Almost all 25% of the global share of the rice export is from India only, and the country is facing lot of prices in domestic market. Because of that only government come up with the minimum export price. Why that lot of demand in India? Because of the low production, because of the high demand, rising input cost, the increased cost of fertilizers, pesticides, because of these various factors, and the supply chain disruptions like lack of rice mills as many, and lack of wholesale shops, and in some cargo issues. Because of various issues, the price of the rice is increasing a lot in India. And this led to what? This led to inflation as well as food security. Of course, inflation will also affect the common man very deeply. What are the government measures? Government is regulating the rice trade by using this minimum export price. as well as government is ensuring the certain amount of the stock is available to the poor people by giving more supply to the PDS, public distribution system. In 2021, government even put this kind of restriction on the white rice also. At that time, there were no restrictions on the parboiled rice, but later, they started imposing restrictions on the parboiled rice. Now they came up with restrictions on the Basmati rice with 1200 per ton. Response of the market, how the market is reacted. Of course, the market reacted both in positive as well as negative way. In terms of positive, to control the inflation and to protect the interest of the domestic consumers, there is nothing wrong that government can go for this kind of initiative. Positive one, as well as it will increase the domestic supply so that inflation will be controlled. Third point, it will not affect the India's trade because the trade value of the rice is almost all not more than 2% of the entire trade volume of India. Because some of you may argue that if you come up with this minimum export price, rice will not be exported out of India. That means obviously our export will be lowered. That might be your argument. But it won't happen also because, this trade volume is very less. Criticism is, the first criticism is it is very short-sighted and counterproductive policy. Rather than government is increasing the supply of the rice, you are restricting the rice export. That means it is a short-sightedness and it is not good for long term. Second one, it will reduce the India's export volume. Okay, whatever that amount is, but definitely the rice exports will be reduced because of this minimum export price, and it will create a supply gap. So many African countries, they are depending on exports from India, and this will also give opportunities to other countries to compensate the market. Those countries such as Pakistan, Vietnam and Myanmar. And rather than this kind of knee-jerk reactions, we have to go for more stable policy so that we can face this kind of issues. Objective of minimum export price, like I said earlier, the major objective is to control the inflation in a country so that we can make sure the food security. Now let's see, price stability, domestic food security, we can protect the farmers as well as inflation control. But protecting farmers is somewhat the contentious issue, because if you are limiting the exports, obviously who are going to hurt? Farmers are going to hurt a lot. That we should know. Next, key features of minimum export price. We will keep a particular price so that it will control the exports, and every 3 months or every 6 months it will be reviewed, and it is only particular good specific. If the goods supply is increased in India, this will be removed on that particular good. Okay, tell me students, for how many Rabi crops we are giving the minimum support price? Tell me, MSP. For how many Rabi crops we are giving minimum support price? Tell me the answer. Significance. What is the significance? It is related to domestic welfare. Middle class people will get protected from inflation, and it will give stability, macroeconomic stability by controlling the inflation. These are some of the benefits. Challenges. It may affect our trade relation with other countries, because we might have already promised that we will export certain amount of the rice. That will be affected, and we are losing out market to some other countries. And this is the short-sighted response. These are some of the criticism in minimum export price. What is the way forward? The way forward is, when we are going for these kind of things, minimum export policy and all these things, we have to take into confidence the domestic producers, exporters and consumers. We have to take various stakeholders into confidence so that it will give better response. The conclusion is, there is always a delicate balance between the international trade and domestic demand. So we have to carefully balance between these two so that we can achieve the price stability, food security, and we can also achieve the international trade. This is the conclusion. Yesterday's video's question. With reference to Greece, consider the following statements. It is located on the southern tip of the Balkan Peninsula. Okay, right? It shares maritime border with France and Germany. No. It is constitution is monarchy. No. It is a parliamentary form of government. So only one pair is right. A. Next, Bidri were recently seen in news. It is related to which state? Karnataka. Next, random forest technology, which was recently seen in news. It is issued for what? Predicting the air quality index. Next, S-400 air defense missile system. It is recently in news. It was developed by which one of the countries? Russia. Even we bought from Russia also. S-400. Minimum export price, which was recently in news, is imposed on? Is imposed on what? When there is a rising demand for a particular product in our country, to control that price of that product, we will use this particular, like minimum export price. Next, today's video question is, with reference to the international trade of India at present, which of the following statements are correct? Read all these 4 statements. Which statement is right regarding the international trade of India? Mains question. What are the key features and potential impacts of the newly announced Foreign Trade Policy 2023? So, what are the impacts of the Foreign Trade Policy 2023 on India, as India's domestic growth as well as the India's international trade? So, this is today's mains question. Now, let us see, as we reach to the end of this video, let's see what we discussed in this video. We discussed what is the minimum export price, why we imposed minimum export price on parabol rice and basmati rice, and why it is significant. What are the challenges in implementing the minimum export price? How it can be misused also we gone through. And so we also discussed about what are the criticism against the minimum export price. So this is the detailed analysis regarding the minimum export price.